Hi, I'm Dom Kane, and today I'm going to go through the Drumazon synth by D16. It's a VST for both Mac and PC, emulating the classic 909 drum machine. Everyone knows the kind of sounds to expect here, so I'll get stuck in straight away and show you what it looks like. There are four main sections to Drumazon. Starting at the bottom, you have the 16 buttons to trigger drum sounds in a pattern. Above that is where you can edit the patterns and the overall settings of those patterns. And then above that you have the main sound design section where you can manipulate each drum sound separately. And then finally across the top of the screen is the general settings and options menu. Starting with the options button here, clicking it allows you to set the output channels for each drum sound. And then the sequencer tab allows you to change things like the clock settings. Then the presets, patterns and drum maps tabs allow you to set the default storage locations of each one, so that you can easily recall them and edit them at a later date. The final tab is for setting MIDI CC values to control Drumazon and trigger sounds from an external controller. Next to the options tab are the sequencer settings, where you can select the internal sequencer, or deactivate it to write your patterns by MIDI in your host. The same can be done here with the synchronization and the host mode. The next panel across offers you a chance to assign MIDI controllers to the buttons and dials of Drumazon by clicking MIDI Learn and then turning the dial you want to assign it to on your external controller. The next two panels across are for naming, renaming and browsing presets. In the case of Drumazon, a preset is the actual sounds and mix levels of a drum kit or group of sounds. The main panel here is for creating those preset groups of sounds. You can modify all sorts of parameters, so for example if I solo the bass drum here and start to play a pattern, then I can modify the level, attack, tune, decay, pitch and tune depth like this. Notice each time a drum sound is triggered, a red LED will flash above the corresponding sound, and there are mute and solo buttons above those, and you can also select the output channel of each sound above those. Below the Instruments panel is where you can design the sequences and patterns of drum beats. Although there are several built into the device, you can also create and store your own. First of all, there are the obvious start and stop buttons here. And then there is this pattern write button here. When it's not activated, selecting one of the 16 pads down here will change the pattern and bank. There are 12 patterns per bank, so selecting pads 1 to 12 will change the pattern. And selecting pads 13 to 16 will change the bank. So let's say for example we want pattern 2 from bank 2. Then we would make sure the pattern write button is off, and then select pad 14 to choose bank 2, and then pad 2 to choose the second pattern in that bank. Now finally, to edit a pattern, for example the one I've just selected, when I click the pattern write button here and play the pattern, you'll see that certain pads from 1 to 16 have been highlighted. This is because the 16 pads now represent 16th notes of time in the 1-bar loop. So if I select this big dial to the first item BD, it will show me the current pattern within the loop for the bass drum. Now if I want, I can solo the bass drum and start to play the loop and then change the pattern of the instrument like this. This can be done for all instruments. Some of the other useful buttons while editing a pattern can be found here. For example, if you want to change the length of the loop, you can click the length button here, and then choose the length of the loop by selecting the point in the 16 pads where you want the loop to be reset. If you want to tap the instrument sounds into the loop, you can select Tap here, and then each pad corresponds to the instrument name below. So for example, pads 1 and 2 correspond to the bass drum. When Flam is activated here, each time you select an instrument to place in the pattern, it will be a flam instead of a single hit. A flam is essentially when a drummer hits the snare, for example, with both sticks, but at slightly different times, causing a double hit, which often appears louder. The shift buttons found here are for shifting the entire pattern of your selected instrument, left or right, within the overall arrangement of your pattern. Then finally here, there are Accept, Undo, Copy, Paste and Clear buttons for copying patterns from one instrument to another. Then there are 4 dials here. Shuffle for changing the overall swing of the pattern, Flam for adjusting the swing of the flams, Total accent for changing the overall velocity of your instruments, and then the tempo for when you're using Drumazon's own clock. I'll leave you now with a couple of basic patterns I've put down over a bass line to give you a better idea of how the synth sounds at work. So that's the Drumazon VST from D16. It's available for both Mac and PC, and it's a pretty rock solid 909 emulator with the added advantage of being a VST, so there's more features that you could actually put on than the original. So I hope you like it as much as I do. See you soon.